I will now attempt a reading of part of one of the Hittite stories about the storm god and his battle against the great serpent. This is a somewhat precarious exercise. Hittite is written in a very confusing script, which does not exactly, or at least not easily, express the underlying phonology very well. And also, there are a number of words in Hittite which are not written phonetically, but which are written with logograms, as you can find today in Japanese or Chinese. And in some cases, modern scholarship doesn't even know how to read these logograms. I shall try in reading this text to phoneticize as many of these as I can, as many as are known with some sort of certainty. But there are a couple that I won't be able to read aloud in Hittite because we just don't know what the words were in Hittite. And in those cases, what one usually does is one reads relevant words in Sumerian and Akkadian, because those are the languages from which the signs are derived, and that's how they are usually transliterated when reading Hittite today, to express the signs that we don't know what they sounded like. Actually, all logograms tend to be transliterated like that, i.e. in Sumerian and Akkadian, which leads to the confusing fact that when Hittite is read today in transliteration, it's really three languages interspersed with each other. It's Hittite, and then some words in Sumerian and some words in Akkadian. To the Hittites themselves, all of it would have been read in Hittite, but we'll have to make do with what we can. But I'll Hittiteify as much of the text as I can. And this is a text, as mentioned, about how the storm god, who in Hittite was called tarḥu, which means the conqueror, or the victorious one, how he's initially conquered. There's a joke there. There's this phrase which appears in the text, Nutsa iluyankas tarḥunan tarḥta, and the serpent conquered the conqueror. That is, the storm god initially gets a taste of his own medicine. He's the conqueror par excellence. He's the tarḥunas. He's the conqueror, but he gets conquered. But then later on, he gets help from a divine friend of his and also a mortal, and they manage to more or less subdue the chaos serpent in a rather funny way, which I'll return to at the end. And then finally, tarḥunas can appear and do the deed and kill the serpent in perhaps a less than heroic way. And I'll return to how he does that later on. But first, I'm going to try to read it. It goes something like this, the relevant part. Man tarḥunas iluyankassa kiskilussi argatier. Nutsa iluyankas tarḥunan tarḥta. Tarḥunassa siunas homantus mugait. Andamapa tiatten, nutsa inaras kallištarwanan iet. Nuhoman mekki handait. Vianas palchi, marnuandas palchi, walchias palchi, nu palchas andan iada iet. Nu inaras Zigarati pait, nu hobasian antuchsan wemit. Umma inar hopasia kasawa kia uttar iami. Nuamusan zika harapchut. Umma hopasia ana inar. Mawa kattiti seesmi. Nuwa uami. Kardias tas iami. Nas kattissi setsta. Nu inaras hopasian pehutet nan munnait. Inarasats unuttat. Nasta iluyankan chantesnat sra kalista. Kasawa kallištarwanan iami. Nuwa adanna aguanna ehu. Nasta iluyankas kadudumu meshu sara uer. Nutsa eder eguer. Nasta palchan homandan eguer. Netsa ninker. Ne namma chattesnas katanda noman pansi. Hobasiassa uit. Nu ilujankan ischimanta kaleliet. Tarħunas uit. Nu kan ilujankan cuenta. Siwanniessa kattissi eser. Right. So what happens here is, at first, as I mentioned, the storm god and the serpent come to blows in a city called Kiskilusa. Nutsa ilujankas tarhunan tarhuta. And the serpent conquered the conqueror. That is, he conquered the storm god. And again, there's wordplay going on there. And then what does the storm god do? Well, he enlists the help of the other gods. And one of the most important gods here is the goddess Inara. And she makes a feast written with the Sumerian sign EZEN, which in this context is probably to be read kallištarwana, which is the Hittite word for feast. And she makes a great feast with lots of wine and every good thing, wine and beer and everything, and invites people to it. And she also enlists the help of a human person, a man called Hobasia. And she says, it's wonderful what she says. She says, Kasawa, look here, you, kia uttar iami. I am doing so-and-so thing. I am doing this and that thing. Namely, the thing that was mentioned before, making a feast with lots of wine and stuff. And then she says, Nua musan tsika harpchut. Come along and join me, you too. That's the wonderful verb harp, which means something like to go over to somebody else's side and join them. So she asks him to tsika harpchut. Come join me, you too. But this guy, Hobasia, he makes a sort of bargain. He says, Mawa katiti seesmi nuwa uami. If I can sleep with you, then I'll come join you. And then I will kardiastas iami. I will do your heart's desire. Kardiastas, your heart, which is kardias there is related to the English word heart and all the Indo-European related words for heart, like cor in Latin and ger in Greek and so on. And Kattisi sesta, and he did sleep with her, so he got his part of the bargain. And what happens then? Well, she hides him and carries him with her. Nasta ilujankan chantesnat sara kalista. She called up the serpent from his hole. He lives in a hole in the ground. And what does she say? She says, Kasawa, look here. Kallištarwanan iami. I'm making a feast. Nua adanna aguanna ehu. Come eat and drink. And adanna there, to eat, is actually a cognate of the English word eat. And aguanna, which means to drink, is cognate with the Latin ebrius, which means drunk. So she calls the serpent up from the hole in the ground so that the serpent may eat and drink. Adanna aguanna echu. And lo and behold, the serpent does just that. Nasta ilujankas kadudumu mesu sara uer. And the serpent and his children came up. The problem there is that the word for child or son in Hittite is actually unknown. It's always written with the Sumerian dumu sign. So here, what we have here in the text is kadu dumu meshu. Actually, part of it is actually reconstructed. And we don't know what kadu dumu meshu would have sounded like in Hittite, but it means together with his children or together with his sons. Nutsa eder egwer. And they ate and they drank. Nasta palchan homandan egwer. They drank every vessel. And the text says, so they were satiated. So they were satiated. Ne nama hatesnats katanda noman pansi. And now they could no longer go down into their hole. So I guess they were so swollen up and fat and drunk so that they could literally not fit down the hole anymore. And what happens then? Well, now our human hero appears. Our reluctant human hero appears. Hopasia came and he tied the serpent up with a cord. And then our great hero, the conqueror, tarħu, finally appears again on the scene after his defeat at the start of the text. The storm god came and he killed the serpent, and the gods were with him. So there finally he appears on the scene and does his bit, but only with substantial help from Inara and her mortal ally. So the conqueror isn't that much of a conqueror in this text now, is he? Still, very cool text. And actually, this is only half of the text, because there is another version of the story preserved on the same tablet, and this story goes on for a bit more. But there was the central part of the most famous version of the Hittite tale of the storm god and the serpent. I hope you enjoyed it.